All right, the last one that we want to mention, and it's fitting because we just finished probably one of the most popular events in the Summer Olympics is gymnastics, and we watch with horror and awe when we see people have this kinesthetics or kinesthesia and or kinesthesis. And essentially, we have a fairly exquisite system of receptors and uh, sensors, system of sensors and receptors in our joints, in our bones, in our tendons, and of course the movement of the fluid in the cochlea actually is also geared toward kinesthesis or kinesthetics, fluid in cochlea, that are all part of this exquisite system to figure out where our body is in space. And the Howard Gardner once made the comment. Howard Gardner has done some research on intelligence, and he proposed the idea, and we'll look at this a little bit more in depth in intelligence, but he suggested that we don't have intelligence, we actually have intelligences, multiple intelligences. And one of them is kinesthetics, and he points to people like Michael Jordan, for example, in terms of his understanding and awareness of his body in space and what he could actually do in space is a kinesthetic intelligence. A more commonplace example is listening to a lecture would be somebody who is more adept at auditory processing versus somebody who has to write it down, take notes oftentimes, and taking notes is a kinesthetic way of learning. And sometimes we combine them, and the reality is oftentimes what we talk about is multimodal processing is preferred because you can also have not only listen to it but talk it or speak it, if you will. Speak your notes out loud. Actually, you're listening to it while you're speaking it, and you have two different processes going on. So you have taking notes, listening to a lecture. Multimodal would be not only kinesthetic, taking notes like I said, but it would be visual. You either see what you're writing, you see what the professor is writing, and auditory. And ultimately, the more of the modes of functioning that you can include, the more effective the learning is. If you use only one, then you're limiting how many ways you can gain access to the information that you're trying to master, essentially. So the article, or not the article, the illustration over here gives you an idea of the areas that we've actually identified that are part of the areas in the brain, cerebral cortex, that is devoted. We already focused on and saw that the vision is in the back. Look at the size that is devoted to touch. We depend on touch in dramatic sorts of ways. Hearing's right there by the ears because of the impact, and then smell, which makes sense, is not all that far away from the nose, and taste is also not far from the location in which we typically will find it or use it. So each of these areas are devoted to processing this information in the most efficient and most effective way.